Hey friends, if you're looking for quick tips to help you jumpstart your week, you are in the right place. I'm Lori Palau, host of the popular weekly podcast, Organized Life, founder of Simply Be Organized. And every Monday, I am here to bring you a quick organizing tip in under 15 minutes. All you have to do is click the subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening, and let's get started. Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of this Organized Life podcast. This is our tip of the week. And this month, we are doing a series, which I'm super excited about because I think it's fun and it's a little bit experimental, which is called Decluttering Trends. Do they actually work? And if you didn't listen to last week, go back and listen to it at some point. You don't have to necessarily stop this one because they're not sequential, but go back and listen. We talked about the 5-5-5 decluttering method. And I kind of put a challenge out there for you guys to test it out and let me know what you think of it. If it works, if it doesn't, what did you like about it? What did you not like about it? So we love hearing from you guys. So definitely, would definitely follow up with us on that. But today we are going to be talking about using a decision box, and I'm air quoting that decision box for emotional clutter. But before we get into that, I just want to remind you that we've got a bunch of our free resources, our checklists and whatnot on our website. So we're dropping links below in the show notes for all of our freebies, but specifically which ones are probably most relevant to you now are the holiday gift tracker and our entertaining checklist. So we're sort of showcasing those right now for the month of November, but feel free to go peruse all of the different options that we have. We have a bunch of them. So just go check that out. And again, if you do need further support, whether it's on-site or more of a coaching style, feel free to reach out to us. We've got a lot of different options to kind of help you in your journey. But for those of you guys that are ready to roll up your sleeves and take some action, today we're going to be talking all about this decision box method. So what is the decision box for emotional clutter? So essentially, it's a holding pattern, if you want to, for me to kind of just summarize what it is. So it is a box that you create that is specifically designed for items that you feel emotionally attached to, but you aren't sure that you need, right? You might want them, but you're not really sure if you need them. Should I hold on to them? And the whole purpose of this decision box is that it's temporary, guys. So that is the key word. This is not, we're moving clutter from one spot to another. We are using this, but we are setting a boundary, a parameter that we are going to revisit this decision box in 30 days or 60 days. I like 30. I think that's good. If you haven't touched or seen, like thought about something in a month, I think that's a really good amount of time. But obviously it's going to depend on kind of what all you're putting in the decision box. We're going to talk again, like I did last week, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of this method and what I like about it, what I don't. So let's start with the pros of this decision box method. Well, it provides a space for you to have some emotional distance. And we've talked again here a lot about physical clutter, emotional clutter, and calendar clutter. And emotional clutter is real for a lot of people. And that decision-making is difficult for a lot of reasons for many people. And it is something that is a true roadblock for a lot of people when it comes to getting rid of the physical clutter. So by having this interim decision box allows you to have some distance without feeling like what you're making, the decision you're making now is permanent. And so if you are like a slower processor, again, I'm not saying that you're not smart. I'm just saying that to kind of work through it, that if you need to process that a little bit more slowly, that relieves you of the pressure of having to make an immediate decision, which is really hard for some people. It's really creating a buffer and can give you some peace of mind if you haven't thought about it or gone to use it, or your kids haven't played with it, or whatever the fill in the blank is in that designated amount of time. So it should give you some further clarity to give you confidence to then get rid of it. So another pro is that if you are in the process of decluttering, it's going to at least temporarily reduce that physical clutter without forcing you to feel like you're making a rash decision. So you're getting it out of the space, which again is step number one. Now, truly, step number two, and what our goal is that we like make peace and get rid of things like permanently, not just move it from one space to another. But for a lot of people, just to kind of create that illusion, so to speak, of that decluttered space is really going to be a helpful catalyst in moving forward. And so you're able to kind of enjoy the space and see the vision of what you're trying to create without the permanent decision making of getting rid of the stuff that you might be on the fence about. And so if you're somebody who second guesses, this is really for you. The third thing is, again, and this is for people that are a little bit slower making decisions, is it's a more gradual process. Now, I'm a little bit more of a get her done type, but I know that I'm not everybody. And a lot of people need a little bit more of that gradual, let me kind of slowly walk in the shallow end before going into the deep end. And so this is it is going to prolong the process, but it might be a good, helpful method, especially at the beginning when you're first starting out. And again, another benefit is that it can help you create some confidence of going, okay, I really didn't need this. I didn't miss it. I didn't ask for it. So now I feel good about my decision about getting rid of that. But it also prevents that, what I call decision paralysis, where you're just sitting there in this state of, I don't know. And again, we talk about indecision being one of the big clutter pitfalls, and that will oftentimes paralyze people. And if you want to keep the momentum going, this allows you to go, okay, it's going in the, you know, our emotional box right now, as opposed to having to just sit there and really wrestle with this for any amount of time, right? It's going in this kind of like, I'll come back to it later. Okay. What are some negatives? What are some cons about this methodology? What we don't want this to do, this decision box, is to become a holding zone for your clutter. I mentioned this earlier. We don't want to just move our clutter from one spot to another. So it's funny, whenever I watch like any of these like HGTV shows or Netflix specials about people that are decluttering spaces, and all of a sudden, the space is completely beautiful and there's, like 3/4 of the toys are gone or whatever. I'm always like, where did it go? And, oftentimes on TV, they just put that in a storage, in a holding space, right? Because it's not doesn't suit that particular space, which is great that we can see the vision of what it is. But then the homeowner is left to still deal with it. It's just in another spot. And so what we don't want this decision box to do is just to be another place that you're storing your clutter. So if you're going to do this, you have to like pinky promise me that you're going to go back in 30 to 60 days and revisit this, because otherwise you're not really dealing with your clutter. The second con is it's delaying the process, right? I mean, we don't, ideally, we don't want to be decluttering in perpetuity, right? We know that there's things that require maintenance, but nobody wants to keep revisiting the same stuff over and over again. That is exhausting both mentally, and it's also time consuming. So, and we're going to talk about this in like a future episode, kind of that one touch rule. Like you want to touch it once and not have to come back to it. This method is going to force you to revisit something more than once. But again, if you're somebody that struggles with making immediate decisions, it might be a good middle ground. Okay. The third thing is the self-discipline to follow through. And this is true, especially if you're working with a professional organizer. If you're hiring somebody and you're spending money to have somebody come in and work with you, and then you have this decision box, if you have one of two options. You are either going to, well, I guess technically three if you're just going to ignore it. But the first option is you're going to hire that person to come back to help you revisit it in 30 or 60 days. Or option two is now you're going to have to put on your big girl pants and do it yourself, which is really hard for a lot of people, and they might get bottlenecked. So what we don't want is option three, which is I'm just going to then ignore it, because then again, you're not really dealing with the clutter. You're just moving it from one spot to another. So there is a level of kind of self-discipline or cost if you're going to use this method. And the fourth one is it doesn't necessarily, and I you know what, I read this because I was kind of doing some research online about this. And the fourth con, and I actually might disagree with this a little, says it may not address underlying emotional attachments. It says simply placing the items in the box does not resolve the emotional ties to them. But I do believe, to counteract that, that sometimes we feel like we're more emotionally attached to things than we really are. And I have seen people that think like, oh, I'm going to miss this. And when it is out of sight, out of mind, it really isn't. So I do understand that in the grand scheme of things, understanding why you feel emotionally attached to these things is an important conversation. But I think, if it is something that's super sentimental, when you revisit it, you may still struggle with it. And that's fair. But that's when we pose the question of maybe this is something that is meaningful. Maybe this is something that was inherited, that I inherited, or maybe this is something that really did have some significance. I'm not suggesting that every single thing that is emotional clutter is, or that you have emotional attachment to, is clutter. Sometimes we do have emotional attachment to things that aren't clutter. They are sentimental keepsakes. And there's a distinction between that. Clutter, I define clutter as the stuff that you're just holding on to and it really doesn't, but it doesn't have like that significance. But if the thing that you're really struggling to part with has significance, maybe it's really not clutter. Maybe it is something that you want to keep. And then it's a conversation of, do I want to display it, or is this a keepsake that I'm holding on to for my kids or my grandkids or whatever that is? So what is this method good for? So it's good and it works best when it's paired with clear deadlines. It offers a helpful way to manage those sentimental items, but the success really depends on a keyword of intentionality and following up regularly. So if you want to do it once and not think about it, this is not the method for you, because this is something that you're going to have to come back for it to be successful. You're going to have to come back at least one point and revisit that. And maybe you'll say, okay, I can get rid of these few things from my decision box. These things I want to keep for another 30 days, and maybe you revisit it every 30 days. And if you do this, I'm thinking maybe for 3 months, the stuff at the end of the 90 days that you want to keep, maybe it's not clutter at all. Maybe that is stuff that you just want to keep, and then you have to find a home for it. So that's kind of how I would approach this if you were going to do this decision box method, is check in every 30 days for up to 90 days. And at the end of the 90 days, whatever you have stays, whatever that's still remaining in the box stays. And then you have to find a home for it. It can't just be clutter in a random spewed about area. So just like we did last week with the 555 method, if you think that this is something that might work for you, check it out. Try it. I want to hear from you. You guys are the ones that are going to tell me if this method works. I'm not an emotional clutter person, so I don't deal with a lot of emotional clutter. So this isn't something that probably wouldn't work for me, but I know that for a lot of our listeners, this is something that could really be a game changer. So test it out. Let me know. Drop us a DM or an email, leave us a comment, whatever. And again, if you have further questions, need some further help, whether it's with our free resources or some one-on-one support, check out the links below or visit our website, simplybeorganized.com, where we have all of the things. I'll be back next week on Monday for another decluttering quick tip, and on Thursday with our regular scheduled programming. So until